Doing a good job does not mean you should get a raise.
At my last company, I was working as a marketing executive. The team included myself and a senior marketing executive. As time went on, I began to take on more responsibilities to the point that I was doing more than the senior in the team, which they admitted. I spoke to my manager about what I need to do to get to a senior position. She gave me goals and a timeline. I hit those targets, and she would move the goalposts. She did this 2 more times. All the while I was using my skills to reduce costs and improve the projects I was working on. Specifically, I had started to design everything myself instead of using the expensive design agency, saving the company £45,000 per year. I finally set another meeting with my manager to discuss a promotion. I showed her how I'd increased the profit margins of all my projects and all the extra work I'd been doing. Her response was, "Just because you make nice things and do extra work doesn't entitle you to a promotion." I sat there shocked while she said, "But don't worry, you'll get there," then ended the meeting. She had led me on about a promotion for 2 years. Here is where I started my malicious compliance. I stopped doing anything outside my job description, which included all the design work. Everything went to an agency. The whole team relied on my design work, but when I told them why I was stopping, they were also quite happy to start using the expensive agency. It wasn't until our next quarterly meeting that my manager noticed our profits per project had harshly dropped. When she questioned why we were spending so much, I said, "As design is out of my remit, we had to use an agency." She was livid, as she had to present the stats to the CEO that week, who ended up yelling at her in front of the directors. She tried to give me an official warning for sabotaging the team, but a talk with HR cleared that away when they realized it wasn't part of my role. She then told me that I had to sign a new contract with an updated job description. I declined that too. Eventually, she asked me what it would take to get me to continue running my projects like I used to, and I mentioned the job title and salary increase. She begrudgingly accepted. I was worried about her being hostile, but then COVID hit, and the lady was made redundant. I stayed for a further 2 years before finally moving to a much better place at the start of this year. And as of today, her LinkedIn continues to show that she's unemployed.
Sometimes I think these "what can I do to get promoted" conversations need to be had not just with one's boss, but with the boss's boss as well. I've heard far too many horror stories about bosses who refuse to promote a great employee because then the great employee won't be there to make that boss look good anymore.
That's what I did. Instead of talking with my foreman about what I needed to do, I talked with the project manager, as he was the one that would be making that decision.
That's a really good point, and may in fact have been a consideration here once the big bosses caught on to how much OP had been doing. Before their boss sabotaged things, they realized who they wanted to keep and who to make redundant. Sometimes people think redundancies are random or not their fault. Well, that's not usually the case. Upper management typically uses them as a way to trim the fat. If someone is a really good performer in a business unit that's being entirely cut, good management will try to place them elsewhere.
As an employer, I'll say this. This is the way. In most companies, your immediate supervisor doesn't have much say in what happens in terms of pay raises and/or promotions. The most they can do is pass along the request to those that can actually make that decision, if they even do that, really.
It's so fucking easy. Keep your people happy and they produce good results. How come nobody seems to fucking understand this?
Every company I've ever worked for used negative reinforcement as a management tool. Do X, Y, or else. Even ones with incentives were the same. Do X, Y extra fast, get incentive. Do X, Y slightly less fast, there will be consequences. Or they create production standards and use that to hold over your head, keeping you in constant fear of losing your job. Seems like the days of, as long as you get your work done and do a good job, your employment is safe, are gone. Now they constantly move the goalposts to squeeze more and more work out of the same amount of people, and then when you can't keep up anymore, you're fired. Beware any job that is staffed with almost exclusively young adults, early to late 20s. chances are they have ridiculous production schedules and really high turnover, and only the really young ones can keep up. Everybody else is squeezed out. Don't have to pay out retirement benefits if nobody can work there long enough to retire. Most companies around here are heading in this direction, sadly. At my company, it results as a lot of half-trained idiots who don't know how to do their job properly, and a handful of senior employees who have to fix all the screw-ups.
Hell, even if you do go above and beyond, you're not safe. So I now, mostly, do my job and not much more. Because heck, if I'm gonna get screwed, I might as well not work extra hard beforehand.
I had this exact experience. Not safe for solo female travelers. I have traveled all over the world. Morocco ranks dead fucking last as a place I would visit again.
The good places do, which is why they end up with all the good employees. The crap places adopt your expendable model and hire for that. Getting a competent person is a nice bonus, but they don't know what to do with someone who can do their job well, and they fumble the golden goose they accidentally got.
I had a job where I was told I would be up for a raise after a specific amount of time. I had taken on many new responsibilities since starting, and when it was time to discuss my raise, I was told that sales weren't up enough for me to get a raise, so I told my boss that sales weren't my department, and if they weren't able to give me a raise because other people weren't doing their job, then I will be resending all responsibilities I had taken on that were not included in my original job description. I was promptly given a raise faced with tears of joy. When I left the job over a year later, on good terms, to move out of the country, they had to hire 2 people to replace me because I was so efficient at my job.
Apparently she was too toxic to get another job. Congrats.
I spoke to one of my old colleagues, and apparently for 1 month on ex-boss's LinkedIn she was working at another company. But that has now been deleted. If only I could find out what happened. I used to live in Leeds and have some Saturday nights out in Bradford in the 90s. Since I left, it's been interesting to see Leeds turn from a post-industrial dirty shithole to a decent city with lots to offer, and Bradford staying a filthy, post-industrial shithole. For a moment I thought, COVID made her redundant, was a new way of saying she died.
I'm using this from now on. What happened to Sharon from accounts? Oh, COVID made her redundant. Has she got a new job? She's dead, Jeremy.
Except for the bit about dangling the carrot for another 2 years, plus an actual job description at all. This is nearly word for word my experience at my previous job. I also took on the duties of my colleague, who was checking out on his way to retirement still a few years away. I did get the title, however, but had to dig in deep for compensation. After fighting it over, I got about 6% above what I'd been making, which was already severely below the going market rate. All I asked was for them to close the gap. Unlike you, I did continue the design work, and that has now helped me in my new position. We have access to external agencies, but I prefer to do what I can in-house to avoid the inevitable ping-pong game of communication to get the exact layouts and graphics I need. After playing this cat and mouse game with management, trying to pin down an actual list of duties from HR for literally years, I got another job that pays nearly double what I was making before. The look on my manager's face when I gave my notice is still something that gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling inside.
I've never been good at staying within the job description. I see something that needs to be done, and I figure out a way to make it happen. So, last spring I typed up what I was doing, how much money it saved/earned, and let them know that I got a 36% raise. I also volunteered for a new additional task that got forgotten about frequently, for an additional 14%. Boosted my pay by 50% overnight. I'm still very pleased with myself.
Every job I've had, doing a good job rewarded me with more work. It never comes with a good form of reward. Even if there was a way to earn cash incentives, it would be removed very quickly. It just leads to you seeing what the lowest bar the company is willing to settle with and making that the marker for everyone else's productivity.
My father worked at a firm which offered a cash incentive, $100, to save the firm money. He sent in a suggestion to test the waters. He worked the job for decades. Next year they dropped it to $50. He had a suggestion which was more valuable than the first one. It prevented a lot of material waste by adjusting the production in an easy way, but didn't submit it because of the reduction.
I worked for a company a few decades ago that put up one-year goalposts they thought I couldn't reach with the reward of bringing on another person to the team to help maintain the expansion. Blue passed their goal and was immediately presented with a higher goal for the new year. At the end of that year, Blue threw those posts and inquired about hiring the extra set of hands. Was told, "You've shown you're able to perform at this level, so the target has been raised." To say I was livid would be understating the anger within, but somehow, I sold myself on the idea it was best to stay with them and reach for the stars. This meant working 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the 2 weeks I did take off that year, my longest stretch away was 5 days. It took over 5 weeks to get caught back up. A close and dear friend sat me down one morning over breakfast. "You're working too hard. You're working all the time. We used to meet up for breakfast every other week, and today's the first time I've seen you in over 6 months. I'm a vice president, and I don't work as hard as you do. You need to quit." He said this plus or 3 months before my end of year review. Stupid me thought it's only 3 more months, I can do this. After I met their third round of moving goalposts, was told, maybe next year. Out the door I went, never to look back. And never to repeat the pattern. Haven't to this day. Do not let a job become your life, cause you'll not have your life anymore.
Give it a little while. Her LinkedIn profile will shortly get updated to consultant.
It's sad. I used to be an actual paid consultant. I have records of paid client invoices and references to prove it. These days, anyone with a gap puts consultant on their resume and pretends their excrement don't stink.
Except when that backfires. Edit the explanation. One of my former bosses, passed away about 10 years ago, was interviewing someone who pulled that card. When she said she had worked as a consultant, he asked for which companies. Apparently, in her haste to sound credible, she vocalized a couple of companies that my former boss was very close with, was friends with owners. He mentioned this and said he would check in with said companies. Apparently, the lady went ghost white, got up and walked out. Former boss then rang said companies. Surprise, surprise, neither had heard of her.
Tell us about it in the comments below this video. Check the box if you like this video, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss new cool stories. Thanks for watching, see you soon.